Imagine standing before a structure so massive, so ancient, that it predates the pyramids by thousands of years. Hidden beneath layers of soil and time, archaeologists have uncovered something extraordinary, a monumental complex built over 6,000 years ago. Its scale is staggering, its purpose unclear, and its existence rewrites everything we thought we knew about early civilization. Who built it? How did people with primitive tools manage such a feat? And more importantly, what did it mean to them? This isn't just another ruin. It's a discovery that forces us to rethink human history itself, because sometimes the past isn't buried. It's waiting, just beneath our feet, ready to challenge our assumptions and ignite our imagination. If this kind of mystery excites you as much as it does us, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into history's greatest secrets, and share this video with a friend who loves a good mystery. Your support helps us keep unearthing stories that the world has forgotten. The unearthed giant. It began as a whisper, a curious outline spotted in the soil, dismissed by some as just another natural formation. But as the earth was peeled back layer by layer, what emerged was staggering. A massive ancient structure, stretching far beyond what anyone expected. Buried for millennia, hidden beneath fields that had been farmed for generations, it finally revealed itself like a giant waking from a long slumber. Archaeologists on site were left speechless. This wasn't just a collection of stones, but a carefully planned construction, monumental in both size and ambition. Imagine walls so thick you could walk across them, foundations that sank deep into the earth, and alignments that seemed far too deliberate to be accidental. And then came the most astonishing revelation. This wasn't a medieval fortress or even a Bronze Age monument. Radiocarbon tests and soil samples dated it back more than 6,000 years, older than the pyramids of Giza, older than Stonehenge, a relic from a time when human societies were supposedly small, scattered, and primitive. So the question hangs heavy in the air. How could people we assume to be simple gatherers and farmers have built something so massive, so complex, and so enduring? The unearthed giant is more than a ruin. It is a challenge to history itself. Discovery in the dust. The discovery didn't begin with fanfare or flashing headlines. It started quietly, almost accidentally. A team of local archaeologists had been surveying the land for a routine project, mapping soil layers, studying crop patterns, the usual fieldwork that rarely produces earth-shattering results. But then, something odd appeared on their instruments, a series of anomalies beneath the surface. Straight lines, right angles, shapes nature doesn't usually make. At first, they assumed it was a modern intrusion, perhaps an old foundation, long abandoned and forgotten. But as digging began, the story deepened. Layer after layer of earth revealed massive stone blocks, carefully placed, one atop another. Dust clung to their boots, the air thick with the smell of soil that hadn't been exposed in thousands of years. The deeper they dug, the clearer it became. This was no accident, no random pile of rocks. It was deliberate, designed, monumental, and with every stone unearthed, the site expanded, stretching farther and farther, as if daring the archaeologists to grasp its true scale. By the time the first aerial surveys were conducted, the team realized they weren't standing on a small ruin. They were uncovering one of the largest prehistoric structures ever found. And yet, the biggest question remained buried in the dust. Who had placed these stones here 6 millennia ago? And why? 3. Dating the impossible. How do you prove that a structure buried beneath the earth is truly 6,000 years old? That's the question that kept the archaeologists awake at night. Dating something this monumental isn't guesswork, it's science. And the stakes are high. A single miscalculation could shift the timeline of human history by centuries. To begin, the team turned to radiocarbon dating, analyzing tiny fragments of organic material trapped between the stones. Traces of charcoal from ancient fires, bits of bone, seeds hardened by time. Each piece told a story, whispering numbers that pointed to an age long before Egypt's pharaohs dreamed of pyramids. But radiocarbon dating alone wasn't enough. Soil stratigraphy, the careful reading of earth layers, backed it up. The deeper they dug, the further back in time the sediments carried them, like pages in a book no one had read for millennia. Even the wear on the stones themselves, smoothed by countless seasons, testified to their unimaginable age. Skeptics asked, could the samples have been contaminated? Could younger artifacts have slipped between the cracks? Yet, test after test returned the same astonishing result. This structure dated back more than 6,000 years. It wasn't just old. It was impossibly old, standing as proof that humanity's story is far more complex than we've been taught. Tools of the ancients. If this massive structure was built 6,000 years ago, another question immediately follows. How? How could a society without metal tools, wheels, or advanced machinery possibly raise stones that weighed several tons? The popular image of prehistoric people often paints them as primitive, simple farmers with wooden plows and stone axes. Yet, standing before this colossal construction, that picture begins to crumble. Archaeologists found clear signs of shaping and placement, tool marks etched into the rock, grooves worn from ropes, and surfaces smoothed with astonishing precision. The likely tools: hammerstones, chisels of flint, ropes made of plant fibers, wooden sledges dragged across the earth. Nothing fancy, nothing advanced. And yet, in the hands of determined builders, these simple tools achieved the extraordinary. Imagine dozens, maybe hundreds of people working in rhythm, pushing, pulling, carving, and lifting in unison. Some researchers believe they may have used rolling logs as makeshift wheels or even earthen ramps to elevate the blocks. Others suggest they harnessed water and mud to reduce friction. Ingenious solutions, born not of technology but of necessity. And this forces us to ask, were these ancient builders truly primitive? Or have we underestimated their knowledge, their creativity, and their sheer willpower? Because when we strip away the modern arrogance, we're left with a truth as heavy as the stones themselves. Humanity has always been capable of far more than we imagine. A monument to power. Massive structures don't rise out of the ground without purpose. They demand vision, leadership, and above all, power. So why was this colossal monument built? What drove a prehistoric community to pour unimaginable effort into raising it stone by stone? One theory suggests it was a statement of authority. Perhaps a powerful leader commanded its construction, rallying people not just with force but with belief. The promise that this monument would outlast them all. In many early societies, architecture itself was power, an unspoken reminder of who held control over land, resources, and people. Others see it less as the work of a ruler and more as the heartbeat of a community, a shared project, binding families and clans together. Every stone laid, every trench dug, was an act of unity, a reminder that survival depended not just on the individual, but on the collective. And then there's the religious theory. Could this have been a temple? A sacred place where rituals echoed against stone walls, where leaders claimed divine authority under the stars? If so, the structure wasn't just about shelter or status. It was about eternity. Power wears many masks: political, spiritual, communal. Which one shaped this monument? That answer, like the stones themselves, remains heavy with mystery. Alignments with the stars. When archaeologists mapped the structure in full, something striking emerged. Its orientation wasn't random. Certain walls, openings, and pathways aligned with the sky. At sunrise and sunset on specific days of the year, beams of light would pour directly into key chambers, as though the monument itself was speaking to the heavens. This discovery sparked a flurry of debate. Was it an ancient observatory? A way to track the movements of the sun, moon, or stars? Alignments with solstices and equinoxes weren't just practical. They marked the rhythm of life. Knowing when to plant, when to harvest, when to prepare for the long cold months could mean survival. But beyond survival, the cosmos carried spiritual weight. Imagine standing among towering stones, watching as the first light of dawn pierced the heart of the structure. To a community 6,000 years ago, That moment might have felt divine, a conversation between earth and sky. If true, this discovery suggests the builders weren't just farmers or laborers. They were sky watchers, mathematicians, philosophers, people who understood not only the land beneath their feet, but the stars above their heads. And with that realization, another question lingers. What greater knowledge might they have possessed, now lost to time? Hidden chambers. At first glance, the massive structure seemed solid. Walls, corridors, towering stones. But as archaeologists pressed deeper, strange voids began to appear beneath the surface. Ground-penetrating radar revealed hollow spaces, hidden chambers tucked away like secrets waiting to be told. Exploring these spaces was no easy task. Each chamber had been sealed for thousands of years, untouched since the last person stepped inside. As they carefully cleared debris, they found narrow passages leading into dark rooms, their ceilings supported by colossal slabs. Some chambers were empty, eerily silent, except for the sound of tools scraping against stone. Others contained fragments, broken pottery, tools, and charred remains of ancient fires. But the strangest feature wasn't what was found. It was what wasn't. No treasure, no obvious symbols, no clear inscriptions. The chambers seemed deliberately plain, as if their importance lay not in objects but in the act of entering them. Were they tombs, ritual spaces, or perhaps secret sanctuaries where only a chosen few were allowed? Whatever their purpose, the hidden chambers deepen the mystery. Each one whispers that the monument wasn't just a structure, it was a world unto itself, with layers of meaning we're only beginning to uncover. Echoes of ritual. As archaeologists sifted through the chambers and courtyards of the structure, they began to notice patterns, subtle traces that hinted at something more than daily life. Charred remains of fire pits, arranged in deliberate circles. Animal bones clustered in odd groupings. Even traces of pigment on stone surfaces, as if ancient hands once painted symbols that time has since erased. To many, these were the echoes of ritual. Imagine the flicker of firelight dancing against the massive stones, shadows of figures gathered in silence or chant. Perhaps offerings were laid at the feet of the structure, food, tools, maybe even human lives. Gestures meant to honor gods, ancestors, or unseen forces. Rituals aren't just ceremonies. They are anchors of belief. For a society 6,000 years ago, they would have bound the community together, giving meaning to hardship and mystery to the unknown. And if this monument was their sacred stage, then every stone carried spiritual weight. Of course, skeptics caution us not to romanticize. Bones might simply be leftovers of meals, pigments just traces of practical markings. Yet the arrangement, the intentionality, feels difficult to dismiss. Whether sacred or secular, the monument still hums with an atmosphere of reverence, as if the very stones remember the voices that once rose in ritual here. A prehistoric blueprint. What startled researchers most was not only the monument's size, but its design. The structure wasn't random. It followed a plan, a layout that spoke of foresight, geometry, and intention. Pathways connected chambers with uncanny precision. Courtyards opened in deliberate symmetry. Certain areas seemed designated for gatherings, while others were more private, almost secluded. In many ways, it looked like a blueprint for the future. Thousands of years later, civilizations would build temples, palaces, and cities with similar principles. Central plazas, processional avenues, sacred enclosures. Yet here it was, sketched in stone by people we assumed were too primitive to think in such terms. This raises an unsettling question. Were later civilizations borrowing from a legacy we've forgotten? Did this monument serve as one of humanity's earliest experiments in large-scale design, a prototype for the cities and empires yet to come? The builders may not have written their plans on papyrus or parchment, but their intentions are etched into the landscape itself. It suggests an understanding of space, movement, and community organization far ahead of its time. It's as though this structure was not only a monument but also a message that humans were already capable of shaping the world with vision, long before history officially began. Secrets beneath the soil. Beneath every stone, beneath every chamber, lies a deeper layer of truth, the soil itself. For archaeologists, the earth is more than just dirt. It's a record, a silent witness to everything that has passed over it for thousands of years, and this site was no exception. Careful analysis of the soil revealed something remarkable. Microscopic traces of pollen showed what plants once grew. Here, painting a picture of an ancient landscape that looked nothing like today's. Layers of ash suggested that controlled fires were lit during construction, perhaps to harden the ground, or maybe as part of ceremonial beginnings. Even the sediment between stones held clues. Compacted earth that spoke of heavy loads dragged across it, grooves where ropes may have rubbed deep into the ground. Geologists found subtle shifts in the soil's composition too, signs that massive foundations had been deliberately dug and reinforced. This wasn't a casual arrangement of rocks. It was engineering, embedded in the land itself. And yet the soil carried another secret, one of absence. Entire layers suggested periods of abandonment, as if the monument was left alone for centuries before being used again. Why? Famine, migration, conflict. The earth doesn't answer outright, but it hints, leaving us to wonder. The scale of labor. It's one thing to marvel at the structure's size. It's another to imagine the human effort behind it. Every stone placed, every trench dug, every chamber hollowed. None of it happened by accident. This monument was the result of a collective endeavor on a scale almost impossible to fathom. Archaeologists estimate that thousands of tons of stone had to be quarried, transported, and set into place. Without beasts of burden or advanced tools, that meant raw human power. Picture hundreds of people hauling ropes, dragging sledges, or levering stones inch by inch. Each task would have taken days, weeks, sometimes months. And this wasn't the work of a single generation. Entire lifetimes may have been spent contributing to a project whose completion they would never see. This kind of labor hints at organization, leaders assigning roles, communities pooling resources, families sustaining workers. It also suggests motivation beyond simple necessity. Why would people commit so much to a monument when survival itself was already so demanding? The scale of labor speaks to more than strength. It speaks to belief. Whatever this structure represented, power, faith, unity, it was worth every drop of sweat. And in those efforts, you can almost hear the echoes of determination, voices chanting, ropes straining, footsteps pounding the earth in rhythm with history. 12. Sacred or secular? At the heart of the monument's mystery lies a simple question. Was it sacred or was it secular? Was this enormous construction a temple raised to the gods, or was it a gathering place where communities came together for trade, politics, or daily life? Some clues suggest a spiritual purpose. The alignments with celestial events, the fire, pits arranged in patterns, the hidden chambers that feel more ritual than practical. All of these whisper of ceremonies and belief. Imagine hundreds gathered at dawn, waiting for the first light to pour through a passageway, transforming stone into a stage for the divine. But there's another possibility. What if it was a civic space? A place where people met to settle disputes, celebrate harvests, or distribute resources. In a world without written laws or permanent cities, such a monument could have been the anchor of social order, a reminder of unity carved in stone. Perhaps the most intriguing theory is that it was both. In early societies, the line between sacred and secular often blurred. Religion was politics, survival was ceremony, and community was faith. So when we ask whether this monument was sacred or secular, we may be asking the wrong question. Perhaps it was everything at once, the center of their world in more ways than one. Whispers of a lost civilization. Every discovery raises the same haunting question. Who were these people? 6,000 years ago, history tells us, human. Groups were scattered, living in small farming villages, just beginning to tame the land. And yet, here stands a structure so vast and sophisticated it feels out of step with the time. Could it be evidence of a civilization we've barely begun to recognize? The stones themselves hint at a people who weren't just surviving, but thriving. They had the numbers, the organization, and the shared purpose to build something meant to endure. But where are their stories, their art, their names? Unlike the Egyptians or the Sumerians, they left no written record, no carved tablets to explain their world. This silence has fueled speculation. Were they a local culture that rose quickly and vanished just as fast? Or were they part of a broader network, a lost chapter of humanity that influenced later civilizations but faded from memory? Archaeologists tread carefully here. To leap from mystery to myth is tempting, but the evidence remains fragile. Still, as we walk among the stones, it's hard not to feel the presence of a forgotten people, a culture whose whispers still echo in the dust, waiting for us to listen. Connections across continents. The moment archaeologists revealed the full scope of the monument, comparisons began. Across the world, scattered over vast distances, other megalithic structures stood with eerie similarities. Stonehenge in England, Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, the Great Passage tombs of Ireland. All separated by geography, yet bound by echoes of design. Could these cultures, thousands of miles apart, have been inspired by the same idea? Or is it proof of something deeper, a shared human impulse to build monuments that reached beyond survival into meaning? Some researchers argue for independent invention. After all, humans everywhere watched the same sky, tilled the same earth, faced the same fears of life and death. Perhaps massive stone structures were simply the universal language of early civilization. But others see connections. Trade routes, however primitive, might have carried not just goods but ideas. A passing traveler, a wandering shaman, a migrating clan. Could they have carried knowledge across continents, seeding inspiration for structures like this one? We may never know the answer. Yet, when you stand before these stones, the feeling is unmistakable. Humanity was dreaming on a global scale long before history wrote its first lines. Voices from the past. For all its grandeur, the monument speaks in silence. No tablets, no scrolls, no carved inscriptions shout its story. And yet, if you look closely, the site does whisper, not in words, but in fragments. Archaeologists uncovered shards of pottery, worn smooth by time. Fragments of tools chipped from flint and obsidian. Even beads and ornaments, once bright, now dulled to earth tones. Each piece is a clue, a fragment of a voice that refuses to vanish completely. These artifacts suggest a people who were not only builders, but artisans. They shaped stone, crafted objects, and left behind signs of everyday life. A broken pot may not seem like much, but it tells us about food, storage, and trade. A carved bead speaks of beauty, of identity, of human desire to adorn and express. Most, haunting of all, bones were found near certain chambers, some animal, some human. Were they sacrifices, burials, or simply remnants of time? Each carries a story we can only guess at. The voices of the past are faint, incomplete, and yet powerful. They remind us that behind every stone, every trench, every tool mark, we're living. Breathing people with hopes, fears, and dreams, not so different from our own. Nature's role. No monument exists in isolation. To understand this ancient structure, we must look not only at what was built, but where. The landscape itself was part of the design. A collaborator in stone, surveys of the surrounding terrain reveal careful choices. The monument was raised on high ground, commanding sweeping views of valleys and rivers below. From here, the builders could watch the seasons unfold, track migrating herds, and perhaps even assert their presence to anyone approaching. The land wasn't just backdrop, it was strategy. Geologists noted that quarries supplying the massive stones lay surprisingly close, a reminder that the builders knew their environment intimately. Rivers may have been used as natural highways, carrying blocks on rafts before being dragged to the site. Even prevailing winds and sunlight patterns seem to have influenced orientation, suggesting the builders worked with nature rather than against it. There's also a symbolic layer. To many ancient cultures, hills, rivers, and skies weren't just physical features, they were sacred. By embedding their monument into the land, the builders may have been fusing their world with the divine, carving permanence into nature's canvas. The stones tell one story, the earth around them tells another. Together, they reveal a civilization deeply attuned to the rhythms of nature. Unsolved mysteries. For every question answered by this monument, a dozen more emerge. The deeper archaeologists dig, the more the site resists easy explanations, guarding its secrets like a puzzle half complete. Why was it built at all? Was it a temple, a tomb, a gathering place, or something we can't even imagine? Why does it share striking similarities with monuments half a world away? And why, after all the effort poured into its construction, does it eventually fall silent, abandoned, left to the earth? Some mysteries are practical. How did people with primitive tools move and lift stones weighing many tons? Were ingenious methods lost to time, or do we underestimate the resourcefulness of early humanity? Other mysteries cut deeper. Certain chambers are eerily empty, as though stripped clean. Were artifacts deliberately removed, hidden, or never there to begin with? The absence itself feels intentional, like a blank page in a manuscript where the words were erased. And then there's the greatest mystery of all. What did it mean to the people who built it? Without written records, we can only guess, piecing together fragments. Yet perhaps the ambiguity is part of its power. The monument endures not because it answers everything, but because it dares us to keep asking. Skeptics and believers. Every great discovery comes with debate, and this monument is no exception. For some, it's undeniable proof of advanced organization, spirituality, and vision in a time we've long dismissed as primitive. For others, it's an overhyped ruin, a collection of stones elevated into legend by speculation. The skeptics argue that much of what we see could be coincidence. Natural rock formations mistaken for intentional design. Random alignments with the stars exaggerated into cosmic purpose. Rituals imagined where only campfires once burned. They caution against the temptation to weave grand stories from fragments. Believers. Counter with evidence. The sheer scale of the structure, the deliberate layout, the repeating patterns that defy randomness. They argue that dismissing the site as accidental underestimates the ingenuity of early humanity. To them, this monument is not fantasy, but a forgotten chapter of civilization rediscovered. The debate plays out in conferences, academic papers, and late-night conversations among archaeologists. But perhaps the truth lies somewhere between. A monument of stone, part fact, part interpretation, part mystery. What's certain is this: the structure refuses to be ignored. Whether you stand among the skeptics or the believers, it demands your attention, and forces you to confront the limits of what we know. Advanced knowledge? Every stone of this monument raises a provocative question. Did these ancient builders possess knowledge we've overlooked, or even lost? Some researchers suggest they had a far more sophisticated understanding of engineering than we've credited them for. The precision of alignments, the sheer balance of weight and space, the durability across 6 millennia, these are hallmarks of design, not accident. Could they have mastered principles of leverage, friction, and geometry long before such concepts were formally recorded? Others point to astronomy. Alignments with solstices and lunar cycles hint at more than casual observation. They suggest calculation, prediction, even an early science of the skies. Imagine a society without written language, yet able to chart the heavens with enough accuracy to anchor their monuments in celestial time. Of course, whispers go further. Some speculate about lost technologies, forgotten methods of transport, vanished tools, or knowledge passed down from even older, unknown cultures. While mainstream archaeology remains cautious, the speculation reflects a deeper truth. This monument challenges the neat timeline of human progress. Were our ancestors simply resourceful, or did they carry wisdom that history has since buried? We may never know for certain. But standing before the stones, It's hard not to feel that something greater lingers here, a shadow of advanced knowledge etched into the earth. Ancient storytelling. Long before writing, humanity told its stories through other means: song, memory, firelit gatherings. But what if some stories weren't spoken at all? What if they were carved into the landscape itself? This monument may have been more than stone. It may have been a story, a myth made solid, a narrative you could walk through. The alignments with the sky could have echoed tales of gods or ancestors who lived among the stars. The chambers might have embodied journeys of life, death, and rebirth. Even the sheer scale of the structure could have been part of the message, that the community was strong, enduring, eternal. Some archaeologists suggest the monument acted as a kind of memory palace, a place where myths were not just told but enacted. Rituals performed within its walls would reinforce legends passed down for generations, binding story to stone. Though the voices are gone, the possibility remains. Perhaps this structure was their book, their scripture, their epic saga written, not with ink, but with sweat, labor, and vision. And if so, the stones are still speaking. We just have to learn their language. Global reverberations. The discovery of this 6,000-year-old monument doesn't just reshape local history, it shakes the timeline of human civilization worldwide. If people at this early stage were capable of such ambition, what else might we be underestimating about our ancestors? Historians often point to Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Indus Valley as the birthplaces of complex society. But this monument suggests that parallel stories were unfolding elsewhere, stories we've overlooked simply because they left no written records or glittering empires. Perhaps human progress wasn't a neat, linear path, but a web of innovation, with sparks of genius igniting in many places at once. The reverberations extend further. How should we rethink the origins of architecture, astronomy, even organized religion? Did these concepts arise independently across the globe, or did ideas spread faster and farther than we've imagined? This monument challenges the narrative of a single cradle of civilization. Instead, it hints at multiple cradles, scattered across continents, each contributing to the tapestry of humanity. In that sense, the stones don't just belong to one people or one place. They belong to us all, reminders that the roots of human creativity run deeper and wider than we ever dared believe. The human element. It's easy to be dazzled by the scale of stone, the sweep of history, the mystery of the unknown. But behind every block, every groove, every chamber lies something even more powerful: people. Ordinary men and women who lived, dreamed, and labored here 6,000 years ago. Imagine their hands, calloused from quarrying rock, their backs bent beneath the weight of ropes and sledges, children watching wide-eyed as the monument slowly rose against the horizon, elders passing down stories by firelight, weaving meaning into the toil. This was not just engineering. It was human experience carved into the land. Archaeologists find traces of their daily lives in discarded tools, worn beads, and food remains. These fragments remind us that the builders weren't faceless laborers. They were families, communities, individuals, people with laughter, sorrows, and aspirations. And perhaps that's the greatest revelation of all. Not just that they could build on such a scale, but that they believed it was worth doing. That in their world, the monument mattered. In the end, the stones are impressive. But it's the human element, the countless lives behind them, that makes this structure truly monumental. Preservation challenges. Uncovering a 6,000-year-old monument is only the beginning. The harder task may be keeping it alive for the future. Once exposed to air, sunlight, and rain, ancient stones begin to crumble faster than they did in the safety of the earth. What endured millennia underground can vanish in decades above it. Archaeologists now face a delicate balance: study the structure, share it with the world, but shield it from the forces of nature. Protective shelters, drainage systems, and controlled access have all been proposed. Yet each intervention comes with risk. Preserved too aggressively, and you change the very character of the site. Preserve too little, and it may collapse into ruin. Human threats add another layer. Looters seeking artifacts, expanding farmland, urban development pressing ever closer. Even tourism, though well-intentioned, can wear down fragile pathways with the passage of countless feet. The challenge isn't just technical, it's ethical. Do we freeze the monument in time, or allow it to age naturally as it always has? Whatever the answer, one truth is clear. The stones have carried their story across 6,000 years. What we do now will decide whether they last another 6. 4. The future of archaeology. This monument is not just a window into the past, it's a glimpse of archaeology's future. For centuries, discovery meant shovels, picks, and trenches. Today, the toolkit has expanded to satellites, drones, ground-penetrating radar, and even artificial intelligence. And it's these tools that made uncovering such a hidden giant possible. High-resolution imaging can now spot faint patterns invisible to the naked eye, crop marks in fields, subtle soil shifts, even shadows cast at certain times of year. Digital reconstructions allow archaeologists to rebuild sites virtually, testing theories without disturbing the fragile stones. DNA analysis of soil samples can reveal who lived nearby, what they ate, even what diseases they carried. These advances promise something extraordinary, the chance to uncover not just one site, but a whole network of forgotten histories across the globe. How many more monuments lie buried, waiting for the right technology to bring them back to light? The future of archaeology isn't only about looking back, it's about connection, weaving together the scattered pieces of our human story into something fuller, richer, and more true. And with each discovery, one lesson grows louder. The past is not finished. It is still being written, stone by stone. Final reflection. In the end, this monument is more than an archaeological marvel. It is a reminder, a whisper across 6,000 years that humanity has always reached higher than survival alone. These stones speak of ambition, of unity, of belief. They remind us that even in ages we call primitive, people dreamed of permanence, of meaning, of leaving behind something greater than themselves. We may never know all the answers. We may never decode every chamber, every alignment, every purpose carved into the earth. But perhaps that is the point. The mystery itself is part of the monument's power. It forces us to question what we think we know about history and about ourselves. Standing before it, you can almost feel time collapse. Their hands and ours, separated by millennia, touch the same stones. Their questions about life, death, the cosmos, and community are still our questions today. Maybe the true legacy of this ancient structure isn't what it was, but what it still makes us ask. Because sometimes the past doesn't just tell us where we've been. It challenges us to imagine where we're going.